Okay, so on my theme of trying to do something a little bit different with videos, um, today what I thought I would do, because I happen to have on my shelf this Revell Special Edition 69 Chevy Nova, which I'm building as this video goes live. And I also have this AMT Nova SS Pro Stocker. Now, clearly slightly different approaches between the kits. The Revell is obviously a 2-in-1. The Nova SS also gives you some stock options. So even though the box art leads you to believe differently, there are enough similarities between these two kits that I thought it'd be interesting to pop them open and go through the plastic and see what we have in these boxes. Okay, so AMT is going to be up here. Revell is going to be back there. And let's start going through. I'm just going to angle down a bit here. There we go. All right. So, first thing we're going to look at are some decals. Now, with the AMT one, we get a nice little sheet. It's mostly for doing the Pro Stocker version. We have lots of endorsement decals, the innovator for the side of the car, some license plates. So nice little sheet there. For the Revell, we get a much more expansive set of decals. We have the stripes that go down the center of the car. We have some gauge, dashboard gauge decals, which are really nice. We have all sorts of little signal lights and insignia decals that go on there. Now, the AMT, I think the general theme with that is to be more intended to be built as the Pro Stocker. So cars like that typically have these things stripped off of them. So it's not necessarily a need for it, but we'll just have to keep looking to see what we get. Now, in terms of the instructions, Revell, we get a classic Revell book here. They tell you what all the different parts are, and the assembly, stock or race, nicely noted. We will see that we get separate door cards. It's like the exhaust system, multi-piece. That should make that go in fairly easily. And then guides for doing the decals for either of the two suggested options. For the AMT Nova SS Pro Stocker, we get more of like the old school AMT instruction sheet, the big foldout, the New York Times style instructions, let's say. And we also have stock racing, stock engine, racing engine, the assembly. Looks like we get a roll cage. That's pretty cool. Steel axles to hold the wheels. And, you know, there it goes. Pretty straightforward assembly. We do get the hood with the giant scoop on there. That's pretty neat. And then a simple color guide on the bottom. All right, now let's look at the plastic. Obviously, it's a big difference. For some reason, I'm not quite sure of. The AMT kit is molded all in black. The Revell is all in white, which is a little curious. I'm not sure why that choice was made, but whatever the case may be. So we'll start with the AMT body in black. Oddly enough, on this kit, they have given you the front fenders as separate pieces. So, interesting choice. The kit comes with everything put together here. We have a simple interior, bucket style interior with the door cards already on there. We do have a separate chassis plate, some nice detail molding in there. And just out of curiosity, this is, all right, it's a 1982 production, but I'm already suspecting that this is a little bit of an older kit than the Revell. And looking at them in comparison, I think that becomes evident because we have a much cleaner mold parting line on the Revell kit. Some of the body lines are a little more distinguished on the Revell. And we're going to get separate door handle pieces, whereas these are molded in. What's going to be under the hood, pretty much the same. Underbody, very similar, as well there should be, although we have quite a bit of a different front suspension here. Actually, that's the part I had test fitted in. Let me pop that out to keep this comparison fair. And as you can see, well, that fits in quite well. But there we go. All right, so those are our two bodies. Now on the chrome is where we start to see things look quite a bit different. The AMT has a very bright chrome, as you can see here, very reflective. We have our stock wheels here, and let's see on our Revell. Those are the stock wheels you get with the Revell up here, and they are actually molded through, which is nice. Here they are not, but you can certainly pick all that out with detail. Front grille, very similar, although they chose to do a separate bumper on the Revell. Back bumper, basically the same. The mold quality is fairly consistent. There are some finer details on the Revell, but the chrome seems to be pretty thick on the AMT, which may have occluded some of that detail, and I think that's what contributes to the difference in the brightness. However, the AMT has these awesome custom wheels. I really like those. The Revell custom wheels right here, those are pretty nice, but I am definitely a fan of those. So that stuff is all looking good. When it comes to clear parts, very similar. We have some simple plate glass here. Notice the window is for the full side on the AMT. We also get the red taillights. That's a nice little touch. On the Revell, we have a front and rear window, and then we get the sectioned windows for the rear quarter window and the front smoking vent window. So it will be built with the window open, which, you know, it's a couple of extra pieces to put in, but you'll get to see more of the interior that way. And here we do not get the red tail lights. We will have to color those to build it. Alrighty. The Revell, we use, this is fairly common on Revell models, and this almost dates it to more of a newer kit where Revell was using these metal pins you push into the axles, and that holds the wheels in. For the AMT, we have the old school metal axles, but the tires in the AMT, we have some awesome tread pattern here, and we do get the pad printed racing slicks. You know, AMT continues to do some of what I would consider the best tires in the business. Now with the Revell, we get more of the standard rubber tree, and we have a nice tread on these tires as well. However, they are no names. For the AMT, they have the name molded in there, so nice. For the Revell, we do get, if you decide to do the racing version, we get bigger slicks, but I don't think that's hands down, that is a much nicer way to go on the AMT kit. You know, I'm not necessarily trying to pick one over the other. I am doing a compare and contrast here. So how you want to build your Nova and what you were looking for it certainly will have a deciding effect on which of these kits is really going to be a better fit for what you want to do. Now, spreading out the parts, it seems there's quite a bit more in the Revell kit However, going through them, we're going to see two similar themes, which is that in the Revell, you get options to build your engine two different ways, but you're basically getting one block built one of two different ways. And they give you the parts for doing a more standard engine. On the Chrome Tree, we had some of the more race-oriented pieces. We have the race-style exhaust dumps here, conventional tailpipe and muffler for the regular car. We have a roll bar hood with a big scoop on it versus the conventional hood. It looks like we have a separate center console here. That's nice. And we have our seats. Those look pretty good. Suspension elements, some nice fine molding here. Again, definitely feeling that the Revell is a newer kit. So you get some of the finer detail on the parts. More of that exhaust system, firewall, radiator mount, wheel backs, second type of battery. And then we have, which I really like, the separate door cards and the dashboard. There is no molding detail for the gauges because we get the decals, steering wheel, and whatnot. So let's look in comparison to what we're getting in the AMT. So first off, let's compare these dashboards. And you have beautiful molding detail for the gauges in the AMT, which you will need since there is no decal. But overall, the AMT dashboard seems to, the Revell dashboard seems to give you a little more in terms of your detail. Certainly, the representation of the glove box is much better than on the AMT mold. Here we have those front fenders, and they do have the Nova on there, the signal light spots. We have the standard hood with, I don't know what this schmear is, but obviously that will take some cleaning. Standard hood. And then the blower hood on the AMT version versus the Revell version. So that's very cool looking. But there we have roll bar and a little more beefy but smaller representation of a roll bar there. We have, and here again, this is certainly a sign of older kits where you have, it almost looks like random pieces of sprue with some parts on them. But we have nicely molded leaf springs. We got a well-molded drive shaft, detail in the universal joints. We have a rear seat, wheel backs, steering wheel, and a flash bug again. It's a little more evidence to the age. Comparing the molding on the rear seat, it is a slightly different pattern on the AMT, but there is nice texture in there where we have more like a ribbing style seat on the Revell. And looking at the front seats, those, again, similar type of seat, but just different, I guess what you would call fabric texture. But on the AMT, you'll notice we get two full engine blocks. Obviously a bigger displacement on this one than that one. Get a beautifully molded firewall. I don't know if there are enough parts in here to build both engines completely, although it certainly seems to point in that direction. We have the racing exhaust dumps, standard exhaust here, which is interesting since this looks more like the larger displacement engine, but I can't say that for sure. We do have more of the pieces for the racing engine on that Chrome Tree that came with this, but looks like you're going to get possibly two full engine builds out of that. And then we do have a one-piece full assembly of the exhaust. That may be a little tricky because, as you can see, that's going about 8 different directions. So this will take some manual reshaping to get that into shape. So there you go. So a quick tour through 2 kits. Now, the Revell certainly seems to have more parts in this stack of stuff. I'm not even going to take the chrome trees back out. The AMT kit certainly seems to be a bit of a less complicated build. They do both use the same type of basic assembly, which is common to many models, which is to have your chassis plate and then the inner interior and the body on top. The Revell does come with the door cards, whereas the AMT has the whole molded bucket. But again, I think looking at these, both of these should build up quite nicely. The detail looks good on both of them. The Revell, being what certainly seems like a newer kit, is a little more refined. I don't see a date anywhere on here for this production, but whatever the case may be. But, you know, one of the highlights on me here is the door card with all that extra detail. You can't get raised or as fine detail like this with the bucket style interior as you can with that. The difference between the dashboards, I think that's just a case of the Revell kit being a newer kit, so you get better resolution, so to speak, in the molding. Overall, and again, it's maybe a little of an unfair or undue comparison, there seems to be a little bit better level of refinement in the AMT part, the Revell parts, than the AMT parts. The AMT parts are still nicely detailed, but you get less of them. So this is a somewhat simpler kit, let's say, but still lots of good stuff in there. The Revell seems to have more detail in parts number, but I don't think there is a drastic difference in what you may see. How they all fit together, that remains to be a question mark. One thing that gives me pause, if you look at this sprue, it's got a huge warp in it. If that is affecting the parts, it won't be clear until they go together. For the Revell, you know, the sprue's nice, straight, level. That being as it is, the assembly will tell the truth of it, as I said. I think in terms of how you want to option your kit, you know, with these separate fenders, front fenders, which is something I've and I don't think I've seen on a model car kit in 1/25th scale, 1/24th scale. These both happen to be in 1/25th. But, you know, if you want to do like a real butch, you know, drag strip type machine, you could leave the front fenders off and give this a little bit more of a like a road warrior type feel. You know, going more with the black. If you choose to keep the black, you would get that. Honestly, I prefer the white molding of the kit. Primer will cover both up just the same, but I think the primer, it's a little bit easier painting over white than it is the black. Something to consider. So there you go. 2 kits that certainly give you nice options if you want to go and jump in and build yourself a Chevy Nova, one of the all-time classic muscle cars that came out of old Detroit. So, hope this was handy. Hope you found some info info between these two to figure out what you're more inclined to do. Or maybe you'll be like me and you'll end up with both of them. Now, I don't like to buy replicates of kits, but I saw, and what I feel with these is that these are 2 somewhat different approaches in how to build and what kind of detailing and whatnot you would expect in the kit. Certainly, this type of racing car is not going to be as, equipped, let's say, with details. It's going to be stripped out for the purpose of racing. Here, I think you could build a better representation of the stock car than with this kit. But with this kit, I think if you go for the racing version, you'll end up with a really neat looking machine. And I think you have a little bit more in the way of options as to how you want to do that. Certainly those pad printed slicks are a notable plus. But both look like good kits, so check them out. In the meantime, as usual, thank you for watching. Please do subscribe, share, like, the whole deal for YouTube. I do appreciate that. And until then, enjoy your hobby. I'm going to get back to building. Alrighty.